full session, drop a thumbs up or a smiley in the chat. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, before we introduce our author of the day, Ms. Kavina Elavarasan, let me also introduce Mr. Pankaj, our moderator, and our discussion leader for the day, Mr. Nellai Nayagam. Without further ado, let's get started. Over to you, Pankaj.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you so much. Good evening, one and all. A special welcome to our guest, Ms. Kavina, and our panel discussion leader, Mr. Nellai Nayagam. I welcome you all on behalf of Bija Training, the Master Leadership and Leaders Connect. Or my apologies for starting a bit late by 5 minutes, but I'm sure with the kind of interaction we are going to have, for sure we are going to learn something new from Miss Kavina today, and as she has already written a book called Communication with Intelligence for Leaders. So, without reading the entire book, for sure we are going to learn the gist of the book. So, that would be an earning for the day for all of us. So, without taking much of our time, I would like to officially welcome our guest and panel discussion leader through a mode of a welcome video. So, and then we move forward. So, just allow me a minute to play this video for the guest and the visitors, and then we move forward. So welcome. This is the official. So I welcome you all once again. So Nellai ji, over to you for the panel discussion. Welcome, Ms. Kavina, once again.
Thank you very much.
Please.
Good evening, one and all. Thanks to the Bija Training for this wonderful opportunity as a panel discussion leader. Dear Ms. Kavina Elavarasan, ma'am, thank you for being here with us today. Our leaders are eager to learn from your leadership journey and real-world experiences. Yeah, the communication intelligence is widely discussed, but what truly matters is how leaders practice in the challenging moments, like during pressure or conflict or influence or even decision making. So that's the journey we would like to explore with you today. With that perspective, let's get straight into our discussion on communication intelligence for leader, ma'am.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much for having me here. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here in this Leaders Connect Forum and share about the book and why this came into light.
So to begin with, What inspired you to create the concept of communication intelligence and write the book, ma'am?
Yes. So it's been a decade of experience, and I work as an engineering manager at Bosch. And we all do this artificial intelligence. That's a hyped up topic right now.
Correct.
We work on autonomous driving. How do we build self-driving cars? So that's the vision and future that we are aiming at. So while we are doing all of this, what inspired me to write a book on communication intelligence while working highly technical topics in automotive industry is that as an engineering manager, I kept noticing around in the leadership spaces what was a pattern which was happening again and again. I saw that incredibly intelligent, capable, and very high performing leaders, they were doing a common mistake in communication, not because they lacked expertise, but because their communication was not creating that influence they intended to. So this was a common pattern that I was seeing around. Most of the leaders right now, they've been taught how to do strategy, very strong strategy. Their intent is also good, right? Because we all have
Yes.
KPIs and we measure our performance out of KPIs. We work with teams for KPIs. But somewhere between that strategy intention, that influence was getting lost. So this is what I was seeing. And that made me realize something very important. That communication is not just about delivering information. It is about shaping experience with
Super.
individuals, with the team members, with the organization that they're all leading. So that's when the idea of communication intelligence came to the fore. Because as leaders, many of you will agree with me when I say this, that we've been constantly taught that communication is a skill, is a soft skill.
Good.
Speak with clarity. Think about the outcomes. Shape your communication in a way that people will understand. Communication is all about information, right? Now,
Yes.
many of us would have heard this a lot of times from our schooling till today, right? So that is when I realized that communication is not about just speaking to be heard, not also about speaking to be understood, but communication intelligence is about speaking to be felt, emotionally connected to people. And that's when influence is born. So that's the whole reason how and why the book came into picture.
Oh.
Thanks for
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah, I can remember one thing that as John Maxwell says, the people may hear your words, but they feel your attitude, and your journey clearly reflects that communication begins far beyond the language. So that's a
Absolutely.
powerful
And
beginning,
there
ma'am.
is also one more quote, which I would like to quote for all of us watching
Yes,
this.
please.
So Maya Angelou, she says that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel.
Correct.
And communication is all about making people feel, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's the gist of communication intelligence for all of us.
So you clearly highlighted the communication, not just a skill and but a human experience, which brings me naturally to the next question, ma'am. And in your book, you say communication is experienced emotionally before it processed intellectually. Can you explain what that means for the leaders?
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking that particular question because that's an important part of the book. And yes, absolutely, it's one of the most important ideas of the book. Why? Because most leaders believe that they just want to, people want to listen to them, right? And later
Yes.
they will decide how they want to feel. But the neuroscience, it's the high performing biology, it actually shows something very opposite. What it says is that before people analyze the logic, analyze words, they respond emotionally first to the tone, to the presence, to the energy, to the facial expressions, and the intent first. Now, let me tell you this. There's this a small part in the brain called as amygdala. It's just the shape of an almond. And the most important job of this amygdala is to keep a human safe. So what does it do? It constantly, it's like a radar. It constantly keeps a check, looking out for signals of safety or threat. So while it does, it checks even for a smallest of a signal of danger. If there is a danger, amygdala gets hijacked. We call it amygdala hijack. That's a very famous word that you get through in neuroscience. What happens when the amygdala gets hijacked? It processes and alerts the entire nervous system that there is a danger, so that fight, flight, freeze is the next response. In the meantime, the rational brain gets shut down. So this amygdala, can you believe that in less than 120 millisecond, people can detect danger? And when I say danger, I'm not talking about spotting a lion, or I'm not thinking about hearing an alarm, fire alarm sound. It could be as simple as a change in the tone of the voice of a leader. And that is why I say that the communication is always processed emotionally, because the microseconds is how our amygdala is getting activated, and it captures all the subtle micro signals of a leader. Hence, I would say that any leader is first emotionally experienced before he is processed intellectually, whatever he says. So that's the whole reason. And that's the gap that we see right now between that intention and that the emotional impact. And that's where communication intelligence comes into picture, of making people aware, making leaders aware.
That's a very insightful perspective, ma'am. Many leaders focus on the words they speak, but what truly stays with the people is often the feeling behind those words. And that connects this. I hope what you're saying about a non-verbal communication other than what we verbally communicated.
True, very true.
And this connects beautifully to the one more, the most memorable concept of your book. And what is emotional aftertaste concept of your book? And what do you believe it is critical for influence?
Wow, that's a very important question that you have asked. Thank you very much for asking that question. So, emotional aftertaste, yes, it's probably one of the most powerful concepts in the entire book.
Yeah.
So, now before I answer what is emotional aftertaste, I'd like all of us here to put it in the chat window, or if you're uncomfortable, you can even unmute and tell me. So, when was the last time we met a stranger? Maybe in a lift, that we shared few moments of conversation with a stranger, or you met somebody at a restaurant, or you sparked a conversation at your office when you're walking through the lounge area. It could be anything, right? Now, if I ask you all a question, how was that conversation? Perhaps we would say good, bad, ugly. Now, here's an important question that I want to ask you all. Do you remember? Comfortable. Thank you so much. Right now, look at the words that is popping up in our mind, right? Comfortable, good. Now, if I ask you all, do you remember, or can you remember the exact words of the conversation? I see pleasant, casual. Thank you very much, Mr. Ganesh and Kalakanan. Thanks for the answers. Do you remember the exact words of those conversations? No, right? Because that's the beauty of human communication. We often forget what was the content. We often forget what was the structure that we spoke, the sentences, the words. Yes, Mr. Ganesh just nailed it. I remember the feelings, the emotions. So at the end of any communication, what stays is not the words. What stays is the emotion of that communication. And that emotion, that feeling that stays with us or lingers with us after the communication has ended is what I call the emotional aftertaste. And this feeling, the emotional aftertaste, is very important. Why? Because that is what decides what actions the person takes next. Do I want to meet this person again? Do I want to work with this person? I so love this person that I want to follow his leadership. Right? So all of the next actions depends on this emotional aftertaste. Now let's bring this a little closer to home, right? Now, how many of us love to go for a coffee with a colleague or a relative? Now, how many of us have very consciously avoided taking calls of certain people in our life, be it colleagues, relations, right? Why? Because the emotional aftertaste of the previous communication has not been so great. It has been a negative emotional aftertaste. Hence, today's action of me not receiving his or her call is a decision that I'm making based on the emotional aftertaste. And the most beautiful fact about emotional aftertaste is that it is either positive or it is negative. There's nothing neutral. So the question that I want to put here, or I wanted to bring out in the book, is that do we want to just leave it? Because emotional aftertaste, right? It just happens. We like it or not, we are conscious or not, emotional aftertaste is going to form automatically. So the question is, do we want to just leave it unconsciously to build by itself? Or do we want to consciously start designing our emotional aftertaste? And that's what I've written in the book. And that's what makes our communication move from being just a soft skill to creating that operating system of influence. Now, imagine from now onwards, knowing that this is emotional aftertaste and it is going to be anyways created. If we start creating, start designing it more consciously, what kind of relationships at work, at personal life that we will start building. And that's true influence, right? It's actually emotional aftertaste. That's like the leadership metric that we rarely measure, but we constantly keep feeling. So that's the whole concept that I wanted to bring out in the book.
A wonderful insight, ma'am. The idea that leaders leave an emotional residue after every interaction is something extremely relevant in today's workplace. At the same time, even experienced leader can unknowingly create a wrong impact through the communication. So let me take you to the next important aspect. And what are the biggest communication mistakes high performing leaders make without realizing it, ma'am?
Oh, lovely. I can just go about answering this question because, as I mentioned, once you can start seeing emotional aftertaste, right, you can't unsee the emotional aftertaste. So, one of the biggest mistakes that I've found leaders constantly make is that they think that communication is about information and not the emotional impact. And this is one big mistake that leaders are doing till today because we've been taught that communication is a skill and it is all about the clarity of information that we are giving. I was also like that. Years back, I always used to measure how well I communicated only by asking people, am I clear enough? If I'm communicating, are you understanding? And just that acknowledgement, hey, what did you understand? I will now make a feedback for myself whether my communication is right or wrong. This was me doing the same mistake over and over again. Leaders need to start looking at how are they being experienced, emotionally felt by people. And I think that's a silent mistake that a lot of us are doing by concentrating only about the communication for information. Now, how many of us have come across this situation where you wanted to give a feedback? Very good intention. I wanted my technical lead to improve, hence, I wanted to share a feedback. Now, how many of us, while doing it, have come back and thought, oh, something went wrong? The feedback did not land well, right? So, a lot of us have gone through these kind of situations in our high stake communication. And if you reflect back of what had gone wrong, it is mainly because we all think that communication is about information. And number two, we only think about the outcome of that communication. Thereby, we hurt people, we harm people, we defend people in some way, we make them feel defensive. Right? We just spoke about the amygdala hijack. A little bit change in the vocal variety, a little bit change in the facial expression, a retracted eye contact would make people defensive. Their amygdala is hijacked, therefore they are not logical anymore. Hence, the conversation goes topsy-turvy. Right? Now, imagine a shift from thinking about that outcome to creating an emotional impact, creating an emotional aftertaste. The conversation goes a lot different and the outcome is guaranteed, right? So this is something that I wanted to tell all the leaders, because unfortunately we've been taught that communication is about information. Think about the outcome and talk, give information succinctly. So these are the things that we've been taught. Now look at all the communication uh, laws, communication rules, frameworks that we've been taught so far. Earlier, we spoke about communication being a one way, and then they added a feedback, and then they said communication is a two-way mechanism. Then we had the logos, ethos, pathos, right? Now, how to
Yes.
make a persuasive speech. And then we came into the 7 C's of communication to 11 C's of communication. How clear, how concise, how concrete, all the C's that we've spoken about. Now, we've been taught like that to give information very clearly, to look at the outcomes. But when I did that, when I thought about outcomes and I've spoken, I've always ended up hurting the other person. I've always ended up not being very careful about the emotions. And thereby the outcomes I may achieve, but I would have ended up losing that person on a longer term. And that's not what leaders do, right? Now, if we make a shift to consciously getting into every single conversation, and more so important for the high stakes conversation, what happens is that we are getting in with an idea that the emotional aftertaste that I want to create is, let's say, safety with this other person. And hence the conversation goes about weaving that emotional experience that you want to create. Thereby, the outcome that we want to end up will become guaranteed. Right? And hence that relationship is also better. Now, how many leaders that I've worked with have come back and told me that, Kavina, give feedback? Right? Because it is because of the emotional aftertaste that I was weaving into the feedback. And I never these days get into any high stake situations thinking that this is the outcome. I always get into the communication or conversations thinking that this is the emotional aftertaste that I want to weave. And that shift is really amazing.
That's incredibly relatable and practical, ma'am. And often the strongest performer and assume the communication automatically effective because the results are being delivered. But the leadership influence goes far beyond performance metrics. So for everyone listening today, the big question becomes, where should they begin? And makes the next question that if someone reads your book and applies just one principle immediately, what transformation would you want them to experience, ma'am?
Great. So the question is about that one shift, right? So I would want them to shift from accidental communication to intentional communication. To stop entering every conversation thinking, what do I say? To start asking oneself, how do I want this conversation to be experienced by the other person? What is the emotional aftertaste that I want to leave behind after this conversation? So, this is a shift that I would love for everyone walking out of this meeting room today, and that shift changes everything. Because suddenly, when we make the shift, right, communication does not become more conscious. It just becomes more empathetic, more influential. And that way, when we make that shift, more people will listen to us differently. Teams will respond to us differently. And trust, which is important quotient in the teams, will get built faster. And over time, leaders begin to realize something very powerful, that influence is not achieved by speaking with clarity or giving more information or creating those outcomes. This will be a shift that leaders will think that weaving this emotional aftertaste, caring for people's emotion, will definitely create a much better workplace. So that's one shift that I want all of us to do today, to think about emotional aftertaste in every conversation. Or even better, take few seconds in this meeting right now and think, from tomorrow, when I get into conversations with my team, what is that one emotional aftertaste that I want to leave with? In case you do not find an answer, I would say keep it as the emotional safety that you want to weave in. Because safety is the most important emotional aftertaste that any leader would want to give to their team members. And I've written about that in the book as well. Emotional safety as one of the missing leadership metric right now. We only talk about in the dashboard what are the deliveries, how much budget, how many projects have we delivered. One thing that we have not spoken until today, what that is not there in the dashboard, but it should get in, is emotional safety. So one thing that you can take forward is start viewing emotional safety as the emotional aftertaste in every meeting that you're going to have from today, tomorrow. That's something that I would say, sir.
Thank you so much for your those valuable insights and practical reflection, ma'am. And today's discussion reminded us that the great leadership communication is not only about the clarity of the message, but also about the emotional connections, influence, and the experience we leave behind with the people. On behalf of everyone here, thank you once again for the sharing your wisdom and leadership journey with us, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. It's
Thank
my
you. Thank you
pleasure.
so
Over to
much,
you, Ms.
Mr.
Pankaj.
Nellai and Miss Kavina. Thank you so much for, talking such an important topic and very, something which is, day in, day out thing, but in a simple manner. And you have given a different perception of communication. And that is very important, right? Because, how I look at it is, in communication, three things plays a major role. One is the mouth, one is the ear, and third is the brain, right? So what happens is people people want to hear or listen the thing which they want to listen, okay, and they want to interpret accordingly. When you are talking about post taste, post emotional taste, right? So again, here it comes here in the mind that how do you want to perceive the communication which comes from the other side, right? And it's not only the responsibility of a leader to communicate properly, but also it is the responsibility of the people under and around, you know, to have that understanding of communication, right? So that is my understanding, my perspective towards the communication. And this is something which happens throughout 24/7 with us, right? Whether in the
Absolutely.
family, whether in friends, whether at workplace, anywhere and everywhere. Even, a very simple example, even when we go by a cab, right? If we talk to them positively, we get the same kind of response, okay? And if you talk rude, say something wrong to the cab person, your rating, they also give us the rating as a passenger, right? So next time you face
Yes.
it when you don't get the cab in time, right? So it's
Yes.
a mutual give and take. And as I always quoted this, one of my senior, he has told about communication. He's very much into communication. He says, "What you give is what you get, and what you get is what you give." This I have quoted almost 5 to 6 times here in this, but this is something which is applicable everywhere. So if you give love, you get love, right? If you give hate, you get hate. So same is it conveys through the communication only, right? So thanks for bringing in to us. Thank you so much. This has been my insight, my understanding. If there are any questions, I open the forum so we can have maximum 2 questions. So we have Miss Akshaya. She would like to ask a question. So we will have two questions and then we'll move forward. So Akshaya, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Thank you, Pankaj sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Akshaya, practicing and learning corporate trainer. Kavina, your session has been very, very, very insightful. And being a corporate trainer, I'm actually I could relate to so many aspects of your insights. One word I can take away from the session is like the emotional aftertaste. I'm just in love with that word actually. After the session, what I'm getting to know is like communication intelligence is nothing but emotional intelligence proportionally. I think that is the direct proportionate to communication
Yes.
intelligence. And my question here is, what is the recovery step you suggest when there is an amygdala hijack as a trainer?
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you, Akshaya, for saying such nice words. And that's a very important question, right? Now, how do I recover when I have an amygdala hijack as a trainer? So now, getting a little deeper into this neuroscience, as I mentioned, we have this amygdala, which is the part of the brain which is responsible to keep us safe, right? And thanks to amygdala, because otherwise we would have been long gone, eaten by tigers and lion during the pre-caveman time. And amygdala was a constantly scanning radar which kept us safe. Now, there's one aspect that we spoke about where when there is this amygdala hijack, the logical brain gets cut off. And this is a phenomena which happens very unconsciously. Now, as a trainer, if we are having our amygdala hijack, one way to bring it back is to put our rational mind back in place, right? We've heard this reverse counting from 10 to 1. Why do we do it is because it will engage with our rational mind, and thereby when the rational mind gets activated, the amygdala subsides. So this is one way. Another way that you can do is to cognitively reframe. Cognitive reframing is to tell our mind that I am safe, don't worry. Telling amygdala that I'm safe, don't worry. So constantly doing that will tell amygdala that, hey, I am not hijacked. So please go back to your rest place. So this is one way of doing. For example, we have this public speaking anxiety that we have heard about, glossophobia. And it has been told by the researchers that the fear of public speaking is as equal as the fear of death. Right. And that is also, when back in pre-caveman times, when they saw a pack of wolf looking straight into the eyes, it means the next minute he's going to be a prey. And now what is happening is our brain acting out that when you're there on stage, there is more than 2-3 people, pack of eyes looking at us. Oh God, they are going to eat me alive. So that's why glossophobia comes into picture. Now, how do we work on it? Cognitive reframing, telling our mind that audience, I am the trainer and they are my people. They are here to listen to me. They appreciate what I teach them. And I am here fully prepared. So this cognitive reframing is going to help amygdala subside, and amygdala, first of all, believe that I am not in danger, thereby putting your rational brain back. So these are two quick things that I can suggest as a trainer to be on the stage delivering the good sessions that you're already doing. I hope that answered, Akshaya.
Exactly, ma'am. Thank you so much. That was actually a very nice thing to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kavina. Thank you so much, Akshaya. So do we have any other person who would like to ask question? We can have one last question. And if not, then we move forward. Okay, Kala ma'am, yeah, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question, please.
Yeah, very good evening to all of you. And Kavina, it was really amazing and informative. But I also strongly believe that communication, of course, it's not only the information, your voice, your tone, the tone of saying also matters a lot. Yeah, I strongly believe in that. The tone plays a vital role, when you're delivering or when you're talking to anybody for that matter. You agree with me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's when I spoke about the change in the vocal tone, right? It may be very subtle, but it really makes a huge impact on people. For example, when we talked about emotional aftertaste, right?
Yeah.
There's one negative emotional aftertaste that I came along. There was this coach who was mentoring me, who was coaching me. And while we were discussing, he spoke about one of his instance from his previous organization. So he was a head of marketing in one of the organizations. Months together, they sat and prepared for a presentation, a very important customer. They'll have to make a pitch. That particular day, D-Day has arrived. He was confident, he was prepared, he was all dressed up and ready to go make that pitch and win the customer. He was standing there, and when the moment arrived, when the CEO walked in, he looked at the CEO and said, "Good morning," right? With all confidence brimming on his face. But unfortunately, the CEO retracted the eye contact and walked in. And he met other people, shook hands, and all that. So that particular moment broke the confidence of the person who was standing there with months of preparation, years of experience, built confidence. It was completely shattered the moment. A few seconds, right? So that's a negative emotional aftertaste. The emotional aftertaste that the leader would have given is that you don't matter, right? That's the feeling that it would have been passed on. So this might be a very smallest of a time, few seconds, but then it would have impacted the emotional aftertaste of the person who's standing there. Forget the pitch, but it would have affected him for the days and months together. So that's how important is even a minute of a facial expression, posture change, or the hand gestures that a leader does. And you're absolutely right, Ms. Kala, when you're talking about it. It's very important that we as leaders be conscious about our non-verbal communication as well. And so to
Absolutely.
say, we know the Mehrabian's law of communication, right? Of communication that we speak, only 7% is words. The rest 38 is the vocal variety, the pitch, tone, volume, pace, pause. And then comes 55% of body language,
Body
or
language.
eye contact, gestures, facial expressions, hand gestures, postures, all of that. So it really matters that we take care of all of it. Thanks for bringing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Kavina. It was
Thank you
great.
so much, Ms. Kala. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you once
Pankaj.
again, Ms. Kavini. So now here we come to the concluding stage. So here I would like to invite Ms. Ishwarya from Coimbatore for the vote of thanks. Ishwarya, are you there?
Thank you, Pankaj sir. I'm sorry, my camera is not working.
Your voice is a little low, Ishwarya. I cannot see you also. Yeah, please go ahead. Hello, Ishwarya? So, Ishwarya, if Ishwarya is not there, I would like you, Dr. Ishwarya, to do the honors, please. Dr. Ishwarya? Okay. If not, then I would like to thank each one of you for joining in today. Thank you so much for taking out your time. As we do this as a regular program and we have reached this levels of 259 episodes. So we look forward for each one of you to join us, be a part of this and help us. And just for your understanding, Miss Kavina, we every month we do this program every Wednesday. So initial 3 weeks we call the leaders from the corporates, and the last Wednesday we call upon an author like you. Okay, so even if you feel that any of your friend who is an author or any of your friend who's a leader in the corporate, please feel free to refer them to us. We will take out the time, discuss with them, and as per their convenience, we would like them to come and share their experience and expertise with us to align with us with our goal. Okay, so thank you so much for being there. And I would like to thank each one of you through a mode of a welcome thanking video. So just allow me a second. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening. We'll catch up